going on? Welcome in the Matt Bernier Show, DRFTV, live.drf.com, livestream.com, the Daily Racing Forms Twitter handle, at DRF Inside Post, as well as the Daily Racing Forms Facebook page. My name is Matt Bernier. You can follow me on Twitter, at Bernier_Matt. This is the preview edition of the Matt Bernier Show. Normally, we'd be taking a look at some upcoming races from this weekend. We'd be taking a look at just basically anything that made sense to talk about. Well, guess what? This is going to be sort of part two of the little preview, sort of look ahead to the Breeders' Cup that we did, starting with the recap edition. And what this is doing is going back, taking a look at some of the key preps leading into the Breeders' Cup World Championships coming up next Friday and Saturday at Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky. Go over the filly and mare turf, the dirt mile, the filly and mare sprint, the juvenile fillies, as well as the juvenile. I will not be going over the juvenile turf races nor the turf sprint, simply because there's only so much time. And the good news is, if you are curious and interested in getting a little bit more information about those races before previews come out and before all sorts of other things come out, you can head on over to the Racing Forms YouTube channel, or you can head on over to video.drf.com and you can take a look at the Breeders' Cup Focus videos that we've been putting out for the past number of weeks. There have been a bunch of different iterations of that, obviously, as fields change and they come into a little bit sort of clearer order of what they may look like. And get some more updated information. So those four, you'll be able to find those over there on video.drf.com or the YouTube channel. If you listen to this in podcasts, like most of you do, YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com, as well as Spotify. If you're over on iTunes, write us a review, give us a positive rating. I say iTunes, Apple Podcasts, however you want to term it. If you're over on YouTube, click that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up. You get all the latest from DRFTV. Apologize if the voice is a little bit on the horse side. It was at Fenway Park last night for Game 2 of the World Series. Sox are up 2-0. Yeah, buddy. Hopefully they can extend it up to 3-0 after Friday night's game out in L.A., but another conversation for another time. Let's talk about the filly and mare turf, shall we? And again, very similar to the way that we did this with the first part and sort of the recap going back on Tuesday's pod. We're going to go back and take a look at a few key races and a few key horses going forward. I'm not saying I'm picking any of these necessarily. I still have some work to do, but just some ideas for you to consider. Let's start off with the First Lady. Now, this was the most recent start down at Keeneland, and the First Lady is... It's not necessarily a race that you would normally associate with the filly and mare turf, simply because of the just giant discrepancy in the distance. And I think that's what makes a Raving Beauty, the winner of the First Lady, so intriguing. Here's the stretch run.
Outside, 3 lengths off the lead, they turn for home. Crowned Walk is looking for running room toward the inside in fourth. A Raving Beauty, Valadorn, a Crowned Walk in between those two. Kidura is still lingering in fourth. Insta Irma has come from far back with Dona Bruja. They're all chasing a Raving Beauty who has the lead by 3. Dona Bruja runs late towards second. A Raving Beauty, Dona Bruja picking up the leader, but the wire is coming at the line. A Raving Beauty.
So a Raving Beauty, we know on her best day, she's very, very good. She's very handy. She can get into the run a little bit earlier than some of these other horses potentially can. I guess the question now boils down to, that race is at a mile. She's done her best running between a mile and an eighth. She has to stretch out to a mile and 3/8 now. Is it possible that she can do it? It's certainly possible. It's Chad Brown. Chad Brown is the best trainer that we have in the United States. I don't think I'm going out on a limb making that statement. I don't know that in a race like this, I want to find out that she can't go that far, because there's other legitimate talent in this race. And look, there's some distance questions for some of the other runners as well. But a Raving Beauty, would it stun me if she got a mile and 3/8? No. Am I concerned about it, or at least thinking about it? Certainly. We'll find out if it's actually going to be to her liking. And I'm also not ruling out picking her. Again, still have some time, still have to go through and do some work. The pre-entries are all out, by the way, and that was the difference between this pod being recorded and the Tuesday pod. The pre-entries had not officially come out, and again, you can go head on over to Formulator and you can get them all. And this is the time, I think, to start doing most of your heavy lifting. Wait and see what happens, obviously, with the post-position draws and things like that. All the wagering menus are out. There's pick 5s on Friday and Saturday. Late pick 5s, I should say. Tremendous. I believe 15% takeout, 50 cents. Those are going to be the bets to be involved in, obviously. So at least now you can do a little bit more work, because there is a little bit of, again, Formulator, to me, it's the end-all be-all. Without Formulator, I'm lost. So you can start doing that. And again, that's what I'll start doing. And a horse like a Raving Beauty, going to do a little bit more research with her. We're going to go over to the Prix de l'Opera This was over at Longchamp. This was on the undercard for the Arc, and I say the undercard. I believe it was actually after the Arc. There's two horses in particular that we're going to keep an eye on, the winner and the runner-up. The winner was Wild Illusion. The runner-up was Magic Wand. We're going to get cultured here on the Matt Bernier Show. We're going to show you the stretch run, and it's going to be in French. So those of you that don't speak French, just listen for Wild Illusion and Magic Wand. For those of you that do speak French, a little bit of an added bonus. Here's the stretch run.
De tête, Well Timed qui vient à son extérieur, Wild Illusion qui vient également avec Magic Wand qui maintenant a plongé côté corde, alors qu'à l'extérieur, le numéro 15, With You maintenant, tente de revenir. Wild Illusion de mieux en mieux qui vient au centre de la piste, mais Magic Wand, le numéro 16 qui maintenant a plongé à la corde avec Urban Fox qui est en 3e position et Well Timed qui vient en dehors devant Omeric également qui refait du terrain. Wild Illusion pour la victoire avec Magic Wand qui vient côté corde et Omeric qui a maintenant trouvé sa cadence et termine de mieux en mieux, mais ce sera trop tard, car Wild Illusion est la lauréate du prix de l'Opéra.
I think Wild Illusion is very good. Very, very talented. Beer and I went over the Breeders' Cup Focus, about a week ago, and we spoke a little bit about this race. Magic Wand, to me, I do wonder. I know she was able to shoot up the inside, and all things considered, it was a pretty perfect trip, but I wonder if additional distance will be a little bit beneficial for her, and maybe that narrows the gap between her and Wild Illusion, but at the same time, I think strictly from my talent standpoint, Wild Illusion, to me, is one of the more interesting Europeans coming over here. Now, it's also worth noting, I'm not going to talk about Magical. Magical won over on Champions Day at Ascot last week. The reason I won't speak about her here, it sounds like First Preference, and I could be wrong, but you can find this out somewhere. I'm pretty sure her first preference is the turf, not the filly and mare turf. So, and I think she's going to get into the turf and run against Enable and run against Waldgeist and Channel Maker and Robert Bruce and all those types. So that's why I'm not going to discuss her here. If she shows up in this race, she is certainly a player because I think Magical is very interesting in whichever race she ends up going in. But here, speaking of this race, the Prix de l'Opera, I think Wild Illusion is very, very talented. The additional distance I don't think is a problem for her. And again, perhaps the gap between the top two in that race narrows a little bit because I think Magic Wand would prefer a little bit more ground. But you can't go wrong with either one of those horses coming over here. More domestic hopes. And really, the domestic hopes, let's call a spade a spade. It's probably going to come down to Chad Brown. So I already spoke about a Raving Beauty. Let's speak about the New York bred 4-star Crook because she has taken her game to another level. She's always been very, very talented, but she has gone from being a solid, borderline graded stakes type to a grade 1 winner. And this happened most recently in the Flower Bowl at Belmont Park.
Let loose. She's 4.5 lengths off the lead. Holy Helena trails as they come to the top of the stretch. Where On the Moon again has taken the lead and now given her cue. Here come Arad Ortiz Jr. and 4-star Crook on the outside. And they range up alongside of On the Moon again. It is 4-star Crook and On the Moon again, and 4-star Crook goes by her. 4-star Crook pulls away in the Flower Bowl.
Look, 4-star Crook, I think, is the kind of horse that the distance is going to be right up her alley. I think this is what she wants. And I don't know that I can say that about the other two Chads. We've already spoke about one. We'll talk about the other one more in a moment. I just think there's a real scenario where 4-star Crook, I don't know that she slips through the cracks, but with the Europeans coming over, with Sister Charlie probably going to get bet in a spot like this, 4-star Crook could very easily be, I could see her falling in that sort of 6-1 range. 7-1 range, and to me, she right now might be the most intriguing of the Chads. I think she's legitimately good and legitimately a threat in a race like this. Which again, I don't know anyone, especially folks that follow New York racing. And I'll admit, New York is not the main circuit that I pay attention to. I pay most attention to Southern California, but I do obviously take a look at New York. We go over some of those races with previews and things of that nature. 4-star Crook, when she was winning all of those New York bred races, I never ever thought that I would be sitting here saying at one time that I think she's a legitimate threat in the Breeders' Cup, but I think we're at that point. I think the distance also for her could be a major key and a major differential between her and possibly the other two Chads. And the other Chad is Sister Charlie. Now, Sister Charlie is awesome. She really has done nothing wrong in her career. I believe she's only been at the Exacta once in 10 lifetime starts, perhaps. She's been rock solid ever since she's come over here to the United States for Chad. Most recently, she won the Beverly D. We're not going to show that. We're going to go 2 starts back at 1 mile and 1/8, a run up at Saratoga, which, truth be told, I didn't think was visually her best effort. But the fact that she's able to do that against that caliber of competition and still win speaks volumes about her ability. Here's Sister Charlie winning the Diana.
Get involved. Sister Charlie swings up on the far outside, and they're into the stretch, and it is Ultra Brad in front. Sister Charlie on the outside. Huxmore has given way, trying to get re-involved is a Raving Beauty, and then comes New Money Honey, but it's Ultra Brad in front, close to home from Sister Charlie. They're coming down to the line. Oh, Sister Charlie.
Now, I'm going to echo something very similar with Sister Charlie that I spoke about with a Raving Beauty. Sister Charlie has at least proven herself out to 1 mile and 3/16 here in the States. She's run well at longer distances, 1.25 miles. I believe she ran second in the New York Stakes. 1 mile and 3/8. You'd like to think that an extra eighth of a mile is not going to be that big a deal. There's a part of me that feels like she might be best at these slightly shorter middle distances, 1 mile and 1/16, 1 mile and 1/8, 1 mile and 3/16, maybe pushing out to 1.25 miles. 1 mile and 3/8 at a short price. I think if you just gave me the heads up between her and 4-Star Crook, I think I'd probably lean 4-Star Crook. But Sister Charlie, she's one that very clearly you have to look at her and say she's a major threat in a race like this. Chad is coming guns blazing, ready to go for the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf, a race that he has had tremendous successes in the past. We'll find out how this whole thing shakes down. I think it's another great race on Breeders' Cup weekend. And I've heard a lot about, okay, we certainly, Enable is the star. There's no question about it. And we needed Enable to come here because I don't think you had just the giant headline grabber as far as the racing community was concerned. Without Justify, the Triple Crown winner, not running in the Classic, you lacked a little bit of that punch, that star power where you don't have a Zenyatta, you don't have an Arrogate or a California Chrome or a Justify or an American Pharaoh. You needed an Enable to come over here. But that doesn't mean that the rest of the races are no good. They're very competitive. They're very deep. And I think we have a lot to look forward to next Friday and Saturday. Filly and Mare Turf, one of the more intriguing races. Let's move on to the Dirt Mile. And actually, I forgot right at the top of the show, we also have the NFL Week 8 trifecta. Not a great week last weekend, 1-2. I talked about it. It's like baseball. You want to be winning series. You win 2 out of 3. So when you lose the series, it hurts a little bit. Still 14-7-0 year to date. We'll knock out those 3 at the end. Back to the Dirt Mile. Back to this previously scheduled programming. This one is going to be short and sweet because it feels like 3/4 of the field is cross-entered. They have first preference here, second preference here, all over the place. One horse in particular that you absolutely know is going here and you absolutely know is going to be the favorite is Catalina Cruiser. He's perfect, 4 for 4, never been really tested in his 4 lifetime starts, and his most recent victory was in absolute cruise control. Here's the stretch run of the Pat O'Brien.
They're at the top of the lane now. Catalina Cruiser still just being pushed along by Drayden Van Dyke. Battle of Midway, trying hard to make a race of it, but Catalina Cruiser, really just a workout for him today, striding away, magnificent looking individual too. Catalina Cruiser and Drayden Van Dyke absolutely cruise in the Pat O'Brien. Battle of Midway.
Now the question for Catalina Cruiser really just boils down to, from a talent standpoint, it's there. Plain as day. Anybody that watches enough racing, you can see when there's a good horse. This is a very, very talented horse. The only question he needs to answer now is, well, there's 2. Can he ship out of Southern California? And again, we talked about it on the preview or the recap, whatever you want to say, the first part of this little piece here, this show earlier the week, talking about John Sadler's record in the Breeders' Cup and John Sadler's record outside of Southern California. Not particularly strong. So you're going to have to overcome that if you're a fan of Catalina Cruiser like myself. You're also going to have to deal with, and this is the part I'm more concerned with, not so much the shipping thing. I'm not in the Breeders' Cup record for Sadler. John Sadler's a good trainer. He knows what he's doing. I'm not too concerned about that. I'm more concerned about, we've seen time and time again, horses look like superstars when they are beating inferior company. What happens when he gets punched in the face? And I don't mean that, you know what I'm saying. What happens when he gets into a fight? Is he going to continue on? Is he going to dig in and battle back? Or when someone actually puts up a fight and they don't go away easily, is he going to kind of, ooh, wait a minute, this is different. This isn't what I'm used to. None of us will know. No one knows. And we won't until next Saturday when he runs. And I say this, that is if someone challenges him, which I would venture a guess is going to happen. If someone challenges him, what kind of reaction will we get from him? Because he's been spectacular in his 4 lifetime starts, but he's done it against really a very subpar fields. what happens now when he takes on better horses. Most notably, and I think his biggest competition is this horse right here, City of Light. City of Light, I admit I didn't like his most recent run in the 4-go. I thought he ran fine, but just fine. I hated how late he was with the lead change. He's had foot problems for a long, long time. But he's another one. It's hard to argue his talent, and when he is right, as he was in the Triple Bend earlier this year out at Santa Anita, not many horses better than him in training right now. Here's that stretch run of the Triple Bend.
Derby being tackled by City of Light with 3/16 of a mile to go. Bobby Abu Dhabi holding on tenaciously. City of Light almost level but having to work overtime. It's Bobby Abu Dhabi on the inside and City of Light. City of Light moving into the lead close to home. City of Light captures the Malibu Triple Bend double on a red letter day for Drayden Van.
So with City of Light, it really does boil down to, is he completely healthy? And look, they wouldn't come here if he wasn't completely healthy. And what kind of trip is he going to work out? I think he's going to be more forward, and maybe he's the one that's going to have to take it to a horse like Catalina Cruiser. And if that's the case, you're going to find out pretty darn quick if Catalina Cruiser has the oomph to go and battle with a very talented, very seasoned horse in City of Light, put him away, and still go on and finish the job. The Dirt Mile, I hate how much negative press it gets. And I understand that people say it's basically for the horses that aren't good enough to run in the sprint and aren't good enough to run in the classic, or it waters down one of those races or both of them depending on who goes where. I recognize that. I more so look at it and say, if you're going to have it on the turf, you're going to have a turf sprint, you're going to have the turf going long, and you're going to have a mile race, I think you should do the same in the dirt. And you don't hear people complaining about the dirt mile, or the turf mile, cannibalizing the turf. And perhaps it's because there is just such a giant discrepancy in the distance between a mile and a half and a mile. But I don't know. This is a stance that I'm always going to have. I know it's an unpopular one. Very similar. Apparently, still people think that I just have some vendetta against Justify as a horse. I don't. He's a Triple Crown winner. He's one of 13. How can you dump on that? My bigger point is the Triple Crown itself is not the end-all, be-all. So that's why, my stance on that is a little bit different than everyone else's. I get it. Same with this. I think Dirt Mile is a fine race. I don't have any problem with it. A lot of people hate it. What are you going to do? Not going to make everyone happy. And I'm not going to try to convince you otherwise. But I think this is going to be a fascinating instance where you find out if a really talented horse has the guts to go and be potentially a really, really good horse going forward. And that's Catalina Cruiser. Filly and Mare Sprint's going to be the first Breeders' Cup race on Saturday morning. Saturday morning? I think the first, I guess technically it's not the morning. For the West Coast folks, I think it is. Right around 12 o'clock noon. For the East Coast folks, 9 o'clock in the morning in the West will be the Filly and Mare Sprint, or at least scheduled post time for that. There are two horses. Well, I shouldn't say two. There's probably three horses. They all live in Southern California for the most part, that are going to be the three sort of big names in here. Before we dive into them, let's talk about the most recent race at Keeneland that could potentially be an important one here coming for the Filly and Mare Sprint, that being the TCA, Thoroughbred Club of America, down at Keeneland. And Golden Mischief and Shalone, they got into a little bit of a battle, but at the end of the day, Golden Mischief, just the better horse. Here's the stretch run.
Side, then Golden Mischief is next, followed by Crazy Sweet, who goes out toward the center of the track. Awestruck is looking toward the inside, but 5 lengths from the lead, still wide open. Happy Like a Fool, Golden Mischief, Miss Sunset to the inside, and all chasing after Vertical Oak, and Shalone is there on the far outside. Vertical Oak, Shalone, Golden Mischief is third, back toward the inside, and now putting ahead in front, but Shalone's running on. Golden Mischief, Shalone, Golden Mischief to win the Thoroughbred Club of America for.
Now, I look at it and say Golden Mischief just continues to improve. This is an interesting horse. And I think this race in particular, the Filly and Mare Sprint, generally speaking, and I'm throwing a just vast generalization out there, it feels like this is sort of one of the weaker Breeders' Cup races. And it just feels like, because in recent years, there has not been a standout Filly or Mare sprinter on the main track. There just really hasn't been. It's been some time since I can really even think of a horse that I thought was proper top level as far as the girls on dirt sprinting are concerned. I guess maybe, I Judy the Beauty. I mean, we're going back a number of years now. And you could even make the case that she was not a superstar. She was just very, very talented, very good. Golden Mischief, to me, fits more of that mold. If this was a year where I didn't think it was as top-heavy as it is, and I do think this is relatively top-heavy, and again, I'm prefacing this saying that there's going to be other work that needs to be done for me, and I don't know, perhaps I'm going to look back on this and say, oh, maybe there was more to it than just those 3 horses. But it just feels like Golden Mischief, she was running last year, let's vulnerable, or at least I thought she was. Had the wrong horse, didn't have the right 60-1 shot coming in from New York, but whatever. No use revisiting poor picks. I just think in other years, perhaps she would have had a better chance than she does this year. Doesn't mean that she cannot win. Golden Mischief, she's in great hands, great connections. I just think that the big 3 in here, and I'm going to call them the big 3, I think they have a relatively sizable advantage on the rest of the field. One of the big 3 being Dream Tree. Dream Tree is a 3-year-old for Bob Baffert. She was gone for quite some time. Now, keep in mind, she's never lost before. She's really never, she's been challenged, but she only got challenged by Midnight Bisou, and that was early on in their career. She came back in the Prioress off of a long layoff, and you know if anybody can get a horse ready to go off a long layoff, it's Baffert. Here's the stretch run of that race.
The rail, they'll turn for home together, a 44.93 half mile. These two neck and neck coming to the final furlong. And then it's Cathedral Reader, followed by Sower and Moonshine Memories. It is Dream Tree. Dream Tree has taken the lead here, taking off from Mia Mischief late. Moonshine Memories is finishing well, but Dream Tree's got it. Dream Tree comes back strong under Mike Smith in the Prioress.
She also ran into Mia Mischief in there. Mia Mischief's a talented filly in her own right. I don't think she is up to par as far as the best in this race. Dream Tree, however, I think there's a real scenario where she takes a step forward. She could be a viable alternative to the other Baffert in here if you're not sold on the other Baffert as the favorite. I think Dream Tree, the sky is the limit. Very, very talented. You know that she can ship. That's important to note. Some of these horses still remains to be seen if they're going to be able to ship from wherever they're basically stationed. I think Dream Tree is a major player in a race like this. She has the talent, she has the tactical speed, she has the speed figures, and she has a potential forward move as a 3-year-old at this time of year. I don't have many knocks about Dream Tree. If you want the other Baffert, who is likely to be the favorite in Marley's Freedom, you at least know that she can ship as well, because she went in, she did most of her damage in Southern California. She shipped into Saratoga, though, most recently for the Ballerina, a Grade 1 race, and she put the boots to the field. Here's the stretch run.
Side, Lewis Bay is there, Finley's Lucky Charm, Ivy Bell's coming up the rail, no place to go for Still There, who's behind a wall of horses. Marley's Freedom in front with a furlong to run. Mike Smith lets her loose and she turns it on. Marley's Freedom pouring it on as they come down to the wire. She's gonna win the Ballerina, going away by 3.5 lengths. Still There.
Visually very impressive, and there's really nothing to knock about Marley's Freedom either. I mean, all she does is go out there and run giant race after giant race. I think she's going to be the favorite. I don't know that she deserves to be a giant favorite. She deserves to be the favorite, but I don't know how great sort of the discrepancy should be between her and perhaps a Dream Tree or even the third horse that we'll talk about here momentarily. Again, not a heck of a lot to knock. The one thing I would throw out with Marley's Freedom, and it brings us and leads us into the third of the big 3. Marley's Freedom, and I understand something had changed. She moved from one barn to another since this matchup with Selcourt. But when Selcourt and Marley's Freedom matched up earlier this year, it was just a decimating sort of... Selcourt blew the doors off the field that Marley's Freedom was in. And it makes me wonder... Look, all that time away for Selcourt, there's no guarantee that she's going to come back as well as she once was, and a number of other things. But is Selcourt just better than Marley's Freedom? Or Marley's Freedom moving into Baffert's barn with more time? She's been racing. Does all that sort of narrow that gap? Because if we see something similar to what we saw in the Santa Monica, which we're going to take a look at here in a second, Selcourt all of a sudden could be very, very interesting at what should be a square number coming off of such a long layoff. Here's the stretch run of the Santa Monica.
Home 2.5 lengths from Paradise Woods. Marley's Freedom on the inside is third. Sky Diamonds is languishing in fourth. Selcourt blazing through the stretch at Santa Anita Park has opened up 5 lengths in the Santa Monica Stakes. It's a brilliant win. Selcourt 6 lengths at the wire from Marley's Freedom. Sky Diamonds has outfinished Paradise.
And again, you got to deal with the Sadler issue. You got to deal with shipping out of Southern California. But if you believe that these horses are at least still comparable to what they were that day, which again is really kind of a difficult thing to say. It was so long ago and so much has happened between then and now. Then you could make a serious case that Selcourt should be the favorite in this race. And if she hadn't been gone for such a long time, perhaps she would be. It'll be an interesting race. Again, this is to me one of the races that's usually a little bit on the sort of lackluster side. Mainly because it just feels like this is a division that there hasn't been a real standout, a real superstar in quite some time. I do think there's a scenario where Dream Tree ends up being that horse, but you never know. There are viable alternatives all over the place, whether it is the likely favorite in Marley's Freedom, and I guess the good news is likely favorite, but you're not talking about 6-5. You're probably looking at 5-2, somewhere in that range, or Selcourt, coming off of a long layoff. We'll find out if she is as good as she once was. If she shows up and is as good as what we just saw in that Santa Monica, rest of the field could be in trouble. Let's move over to Friday. We're going to take a look at the 2 marquee events on the dirt, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, as well as the Juvenile. But we'll start with the ladies. They're going to be going out there. And really, this race, there's plenty of talent in it. There's no question about it. But it really feels like, based on what she did in her most recent start in the Chandelier, if Bellafina can successfully get out of Southern California, which there's really no reason to think that she can't, I understand until they do it, you never know, but Simon Callahan has shipped horses all over the place and they've won. I had questions coming out of that Del Mar debutante, and again, for those of you that have heard this, you've heard it numerous times, that debutante was just terribly slow. So I didn't have any faith in her going into the Chandelier. Simon Callahan all along had said he thought that she would be better going 2 turns. Well, you know what? The trainer knows what he's talking about, more so than silly pundits like myself. Bellafina was awesome going 2 turns for the first time. Here she is winning this year's Chandelier.
Top of the lane, Vibrance is second. Brill making no impression, back a distant third. In 4th position is Delou, but past the 8th pole comes Bellafina, bounding 5 clear from Vibrance and Brill. It's 4 lanterns versus 1 dazzling, sparkling Chandelier. Bellafina is Bellissima. Wins by 6 lengths from Vibrance. 4 lengths to Brill third, followed in by Delou and Delmar May.
So, if she does that, I have to be honest with you, no disrespect to any of the other girls in this race, I think she's going to be very, very difficult to handle. Now, it boils down to price, as again, that's what the name of the game is. Sure, you may think this horse is the most likely winner, but if it's going to be a terrible underlay, then you need to at least be looking for viable alternatives. Bellafina is going to be the favorite. The question now just becomes, is she an overwhelming favorite? Or do one of these other horses that we'll mention here in the next moment or two, do they at least take some of the money and perhaps offer some sort of an inflated number on a horse like Bellafina? Based on that effort in the Chandelier, she's going to be a handful. How about the horse coming in from New York, though, called Jaywalk? Jaywalk has done very little wrong in her career. She's 3 for 4 lifetime. She's never been out of the exacta. She really got the acid test in the most recent start, the Grade 1 Frisette, a 1-turn mile up at Belmont Park. She'd been based sort of in the Mid-Atlantic region. She had run at Monmouth. She had run at Park. She had run at Delaware. Now it was time. Put up or shut up. Let's see, what was she capable of doing? She's capable of something pretty impressive. Here's the stretch run.
They're coming to the top of the stretch with Jaywalk to catch, and Kofefi is on the outside. 3/4, 109.71. And they're into the stretch, and it's Jaywalk. And she arrives at the 8th pole with a 1.5 lead. Kofefi is full out in second. Brucha de Terra is gaining ground on the far outside. And then it's Cassie's Dreamer down toward the rail, but it's Jaywalk. Jaywalk sharp in victory here in the Frisette. Under the wire, won it by 6 lengths over Brucha de Terra.
85 Bayard that day. Very impressive winning was Jaywalk. Now, you take a look at this pedigree. She is by Cross Traffic. Now, we know what Cross Traffic was capable of on his best day as a racehorse. We'll find out what he ends up being as a sire down the road. And out of an Orientate mare, I'm not totally convinced of distance. But you couple that with the fact that she's yet to go 2 turns, where some of these other girls, or most of them for that matter, have gone 2 turns, and most of them successfully at this point. Jaywalk isn't going to be one of the favorites. She's going to be probably, I would imagine, third, fourth, maybe fifth choice in this spot. She's certainly not going to be first or second, and I'd be surprised if she was third choice. Jaywalk is a talented horse. This could very easily be a horse that you look at and say, from a speed figure standpoint, right there, makes a lot of sense. You think from a connection standpoint with John Service, makes a lot of sense. The pedigree, I don't think it'll be a problem getting a mile and 16th. You never know. But this could easily be, my bigger point is, this could be a horse that could offer some value if you are sold and you believe in this horse. Because you're probably going to get 6, 7, 8 to 1, I would imagine, on Breeders' Cup Friday. Jaywalk, very, very talented filly going forward. If you're not sold on her and you're still looking for an alternative, perhaps Restless Rider, who is likely to be the third choice, I would imagine, in this race, becomes a little bit of an interesting alternative to the top two, because she has proven going 2 turns. The intention all along for her connections, Kenny McPeak, has been to get to this point, because we know what she's done at Churchill Downs. She was visually awesome, winning earlier this year as a 2-year-old in June, overcoming a ton of traffic. Then she came up, went to Saratoga, ran well enough in a race that we'll take a look at here in a little bit. But then really, she sort of blossomed, put it all together, going 2 turns, which on paper, on face value, that's probably what she wanted all along. This came in the Alcibiades most recently. Let's take a look at that stretch run.
Stretch, Restless Rider, challenging Meadow Dance, and Reflect tries to join them third on the far outside. Restless Rider into the final furlong of the Darley Alcibiades, opening up on a 4-length lead. Reflect is second, Meadow Dance is third, Chocolate Kisses from far back to fourth, but Restless Rider wins it for Brian Hernandez Jr.
You see Reflect was also in there. Reflect has been pre-entered for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile fillies. Don't think Reflect is ultimately quite up to par right now with these girls. Maybe down the road, and I still don't know about the distance with her. She's by Trap Shot. She may want shorter. Another story for another day. As far as Restless Rider is concerned, she's a little bit slow, but the professionalism in there, she's won at Churchill Downs in the past. She has versatility. She can be close to the pace. She can lay a little bit farther off of it as well. I think there's a lot to like there as the third choice somewhere in that 9-2 range. I think you could certainly do worse than go with a horse like Restless Rider for top-level connections, particularly when they're running down there in Louisville, Kentucky. I think Restless Rider is very interesting in this race. If you don't like Restless Rider, how about Serengeti Empress, who's going to be the second choice, perhaps pushing Bellafina for favoritism. I don't know how close they'll be. I have a feeling Bellafina's probably going to be in that 2-1 range, and then perhaps you have a horse like Serengeti Empress in that 5-2, 3-1, which is still not a terrible price for a horse that basically just went out there and blitzed a field. Unfortunately, we don't have tape of that race, but she went out and won by about 100 lengths. She's another one that it looks like, okay, what she has done thus far in her career, very, very impressive. It goes without saying that most recent run, visually the best of her career, she beat nothing at all in that field. And now we're going to have to see, is she capable of producing an effort like that against better horses? The one time she's really been tested, she ran up at Saratoga and Schuylerville on opening day. She ran fine, but she was defeated by arguably at the time better horses. We'll find out if the other girls are up to snuff and up to par and can run with her in a spot like this on Friday. And the last horse that we'll talk about is one that is going to slip through the cracks. There is no 2 ways around it. But you could be looking at a horse that all she's done is really run fantastic in all of her races so far. And perhaps part of it is because she comes from a little bit of a lower profile outfit. Perhaps part of it is because she's been a bit of a price and the only time that she's taken on graded stakes company. But in the spin-away, Sipican Harbor was visually very, very impressive. First thing, let's take a look at that stretch run.
Chasing yesterday is outside of Restless Rider for the final furlong. It is Nona Madeline digging in on the inside. Bella Chow, Restless Rider alongside. Chasing yesterday, Sipican Harbor is closing down the center of the track as well, and then it's reflected behind them. Here comes Sipican Harbor. Sipican Harbor, she's the real deal. She won the spin-away. And then it was Restless Rider.
Now, the other piece about Sipican Harbor that I find very, very heartening, not only was Restless Rider in that race, finishing second, but the fact that Sipican Harbor has shown 2 entirely different dimensions. She has shown that she can come from way out of it when there is a hot, hot pace signed on, as there was that day in the spin-away. She has also shown in her off-the-turf race that she went out and broke her maiden by 100 lengths. She can win it outright on the lead. I think her best running style is probably somewhere in the middle. Maybe not coming from 100 out of it, but certainly I don't think she's going to be out there burning on the front end. I think she's probably going to be mid-pack, 3, 4, 5 lengths out of it, and we'll find out about the 2 turns. I don't think that's really going to be too much of a problem for her. She's by Orb. She's trained by Gary Contessa, so you're going to get some inflated value just on name recognition or lack thereof alone. Sippican Harbor hasn't done anything wrong to suggest that she's incapable of moving up and handling the class hike, but at the same time, I can understand anyone that's a little bit more leery about her chances than some of these other girls that we've mentioned. The good thing about Sippican Harbor, if you believe, you're going to get a very, very square price. You could be looking at 20 to 1 on a horse. This could be back-to-back years where you get a horse coming in from New York who is a little bit under the radar, maybe lower profile connections in the grand scheme of things, but takes advantage and pays nearly $40. Last year we had it with, what was her name? I'm drawing a blank. What was her name? I'm going to have to look this up. This is one of the cardinal sins of radio or podcasting, is looking something up on the fly, but I have to. It was, stand by. I'm sure. Where's the Jeopardy music when you need it? Do, 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 do. The internet needs to work for Caledonia Road. Sorry about that. Caledonia Road. My point being that we may have 2 years in a row, those horses coming out of New York, that perhaps they could spice some things up at a big, big number. Sorry for that little delay there, but finally got to the point. You understand what I'm saying. It may look like, at face value, it's Bellafina and everyone else. Perhaps you can get a little bit more creative in here. I don't know that I'm necessarily rushing to the windows to bet against Bellafina, but there are very talented fillies in this race. Would it stun me if one of the other ones got it done? No. Who am I going to pick? I still have some time to figure that out. Bellafina, though, she will be the favorite for the Juvenile fillies. Let's button things up here with the Juvenile. We'll also give you the Week 8 trifecta, and then we'll get out of here. But let's start things off with the Champagne. 1-turn mile up at Belmont Park. Complexity for Chad Brown. It's Chad's world. We're all just living in it. He's got another talented 2-year-old. This one, he's by McLean's Music, one of Chad's other well-known dirt winners. Cloud Computing, by McLean's Music. We'll find out if ultimately 2 turns is what he wants. We'll find out ultimately if he continues on. But what he has done in 2 lifetime starts, there is nothing to knock about this boy. He looks quite good. Here is the stretch run of this year's Champagne.
Pick it up with a 5-wide move as they come to the top of the stretch. 3/4, 109.4. They're into the stretch. Complexity arriving at the 8th pole with a 5-length lead as Code of Honor takes up the chase from second. Call Paul is third, endorsed, and Aurelius Maximus on the outside. Then Trophy Chaser, it's Complexity in front. And Complexity's going to go every step of the way to win the Champagne. Code of Honor a strong second, and heads were up and down for third between Aurelius Maximus and Call Paul.
Debuted with a 90 buyer, came back and earned a 95 in the Champagne. If you think he even pairs up the 95, he's going to be right there at the wire. The question now comes down to how far does he want to go? The way that he galloped out, I thought he looked fantastic that day. I have really no reservations about how good and talented Complexity is. I think another horse that you have to at least take a look at coming out of that race is the runner-up, Code of Honor for Shug McGahee. Now, again, we've discussed this, or I've brought it up in the past. When you see trainers do things that they don't normally do, or have horses do things that they don't normally, let's say, are not their forte, particularly a horse like Code of Honor and a trainer like Shug McGahee, where on debut goes out there at Saratoga, bang, wires the field. Not a typical sort of Shug move with a debut runner, and earns an 86 buyer. Comes back in the Champagne, stumbles pretty badly out of the gates, drops back to last. He comes with a very wide and very long sustained bid. And when you note that there wasn't a heck of a lot of running going on from the back of the pack outside of this horse, Code of Honor all of a sudden becomes very interesting, I think. Complexity should be the star coming out of that race. Code of Honor, I wouldn't sell his chances too short. I thought that was a very impressive effort in the Champagne to finish second. We move out to the West Coast, where your favorite resides, in Game Winner. Game Winner for Bob Baffert. We know, again, Baffert knows how to ship. He knows how to get horses ready off long layoffs. He knows a thing or two about winning races beneath the Twin Spires at Churchill Downs. Well, we're looking like there's a real good possibility of that happening again next Saturday afternoon with Game Winner. Also in this race was the runner-up Gunmetal Gray. Unfortunately, I feel like Gunmetal Gray was he was not exposed, but he may have been exposed to not be quite up to the level of Game Winner in this year's American Pharaoh. Here's the stretch run.
Stretch by Giroux. It's Game Winner on the outside. Heading row 8 and with 3/16 of a mile to go. Gunmetal Grey couldn't go with them. Is now 4 lengths away. It's Game Winner coming past the 8th pole, extending his advantage to more than a length over row 8. And Gunmetal Grey is next. Game Winner. He's a habitual winner. He's the undefeated winner of the American Pharaoh. Wins by 5 lengths to Gunmetal Grey, who grabbed second.
Now, Game Winner, again, from a speed figure standpoint, he is boss. 2 turns isn't a problem for him. He's already proven that, as opposed to a horse like Complexity or Code of Honor, who have yet to go 2 turns in their career. He has Bob Baffert in his corner. He has moved, basically, he's won at Del Mar, he's won at Santa Anita. We'll find out if he can handle the ship, but again, if anybody can get a horse to ship cross-country, it's Bob Baffert. Again, there's no real knocks about Game Winner, other than perhaps the price, knowing that he's going to be the favorite, and in a race where there is very talented horses. Very similar in a way. You can make the case, the Bellafina sort of Game Winner, apples to apples, where they're both very, very good, and there's really not a lot to sort of complain or poke holes in, other than the fact that they're both going to be relatively short prices in races that have other legitimate talent. And again, as the handicapper, it's up to you to decide. Do you want to settle on the favorite in a spot like that, or do you want to look for an alternative? Again, Gunmetal Grey, I think he's a nice horse. I just don't think he's quite as good as Game Winner at this point. The Breeders' Futurity is a race that I don't know what ultimately we're going to want to do with that. Knicks Go, or K-Knicks Go. I don't know how we're pronouncing that. Randy Moss had said K-Knicks Go because that is what basically how the entirety of all of the horses that group owns. It starts with a K. And I'm going to just go with Knicks Go for now, just because I don't know entirely. When that horse goes out there and does what he does at 70-1, you have to really start to wonder what else is in that field. But I will say there is at least one other horse that I'm intrigued with. First things first, the stretch run of the Breeders' Futurity.
Who's still 7th. They turn for home. Knicks Go, leading Derby Date by 5 lengths off the turn. Signal Man 3rd toward the inside. Sombaye is 4th on the outside. Standard Deviation 5th down the center of the track, but well behind Knicks Go. And Knicks Go at 70-1. Albin Jimenez. Knicks Go. Tremendous upset in the Claiborne Breeders' Futurity.
70-1. Knicks Go wires the field. Now, you would initially think, well, then that would just mean that everyone else is just no good. I thought Standard Deviation ran very, very well for Chad. He was very wide throughout, first time 2 turns. He is bred to want to go all day. I think Standard Deviation is interesting. Now, he's not fast enough on paper right now. He would certainly need to step his game up. But if we know anything about 2-year-olds, they can jump up 10, 15 points, 20 points at any time. Perhaps we have something like that coming for a horse like Standard Deviation, who is pre-entered. We will find out. I'm very intrigued by that horse. I thought he ran quite well that day. And again, he'll need a giant step forward to even be remotely competitive. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, especially with that pedigree of his. And the last one that we'll take a look at is the Hopeful with Mind Control. Now, Mind Control was supposed to run in that Breeders' Futurity, and unfortunately got a little bit of a temperature, wasn't able to go, and instead Gregory Sacco has just said, you know what, we're going to train right up to the Breeders' Cup, because on the heels of his effort in the Hopeful, they have every reason to think that they've got a legitimate runner. Here's the stretch run of that race up from Saratoga.
Mucho turn for home across the track in the Hopeful. It is Mind Control, Mucho on the far outside, Nitrous in between those two. Sombaye is 4th. 3 of them still going at it. Mind Control, Nitrous, and Mucho. They continue to race across the track, and Mind Control is clinging to the lead. Mucho on the outside is second best to Mind Control in the Hopeful. And then came Nitrous.
Went out there gate-to-wire fashion, but the good news is 2 starts back when he broke his maiden at Monmouth, he sat off of a target and got the job done. He's another horse that will need to prove that 2 turns is not an issue. The bottom half of the pedigree, not the sexiest thing in the world. Heck, even by Stay Thirsty, not the sexiest thing in the world, but Stay Thirsty at least gives you some hope that 2 turns is actually what this horse is going to want to do. And if you think that he has that good sort of early tactical speed, he could be slightly interesting in a race like this, especially because he's been gone for some time. So perhaps you look at it and you say, well, now we can at least, you're going to get maybe inflated value that maybe you wouldn't have gotten had he gone to the Breeders' Futurity and ran quite well there that day. I think this is another interesting race. Again, Game Winner, it's not like I'm in a rush to go and bet against him, but am I saying I'm going to pick him? Maybe not. Maybe I'll find someone else that I'm a little bit more intrigued with that could be offering better value in a race like this. Those are the two big races on Breeders' Cup Friday. Again, you also have the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf and the Juvenile Turf. You'll also have the Juvenile Sprint on Turf. I'm not going to touch on those races just simply because timing-wise, but you're going to be able to find more info on those races over on video.drf.com or the DRF YouTube channel. Let's quickly rip through the NFL Week 8 trifecta. Again, I forgot to talk about it at the top of the program, but here we are through 7 weeks, 14-7-0. The numbers are still good, and ultimately, all I'm trying to do is win series. Take 2 out of 3, 2 out of 3, 2 out of 3. At the end of the year, we'll all be happy. This week, I thought it was kind of slim pickings. Don't really love any of these games, but we're going to go on with them. First game, Washington Redskins -1 at the New York Giants. I think the Giants are hot mess, hot garbage. Don't care if Saquon Barkley goes out there and totals 165 yards from scrimmage. I think the rest of that team sucks, plain and simple. I think the offensive line is not good. Obviously, there's talent. Odell Beckham is very, very good. Some of the other receivers, I think Shepard is okay. I think Evan Ingram is a talented tight end, but he's been banged up a little bit this year. And let's call a spade a spade. And no, this is not a New England thing. This is not a Massachusetts thing. Eli Manning, I don't know that he can play anymore. It's father time. He's getting old. All those guys are getting old. I just don't know that he can do it anymore. And can you get by on just having Saquon? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. Conversely, with the Washington Redskins, I don't think they're awesome. But in that division, the NFC East, I tweeted it, I think, at week 3. And I had a bunch of people say, oh, Super Bowl, idiot, idiot. No, the NFC East is not good. The Eagles are not good right now. Maybe they'll turn things around. I have doubts. I don't think the Redskins are that good, but they might be the best of a bad lot. Somebody has to win that division. They'll win it at 9-7, I'm sure. Alex Smith's the kind of guy who will not win you games, but more often than not, he won't lose you games. Adrian Peterson, if he stays healthy, if he keeps going at this rate, I mean, who knows? Maybe he can continue on. He looks like he is old Adrian Peterson, not an old Adrian Peterson. I think they've got some pieces there. Jordan Reed hasn't really gotten going yet. Again, it's more a matter of I just think the Giants are no good. Give me the Redskins on the road, -1. Baltimore Ravens at Carolina Panthers, Carolina +2. Carolina has had a bad habit, and Bill Simmons chronicled it earlier this week on one of his podcasts. Carolina, it feels like they're behind in every game. Home, away, good team, bad team, whatever. Feels like they're always coming from behind. Now, against a good defense like Baltimore has, perhaps that's going to be a problem. If they get behind early, you're going to have some major issues. I'm still not sold on Baltimore. I know their defense is great, and I know they've gone out there and performed very well recently. Joe Flacco, he has his moments. We all are well aware of what he's capable of on his best day, but more often than not, he's pedestrian. And to be honest with you, I think Carolina's sneaky good. I think they're sneaky better than maybe what they have shown thus far. I feel like they're that kind of horse that on paper where, you know, they've had a couple of races where they're getting it done, but not impressively, where maybe they have some back races that are those impressive ones, and perhaps they're building up to finally breaking through and coming along and putting it all together. I think Christian McCaffrey is very, very talented. They don't have a heck of a lot else as far as weapons on offense are concerned. Greg Olson's getting older, but he's still effective. Devin Funchess doesn't have a lot of speed, but he is a big body. And look, whenever you've got Cam Newton, you've got a puncher's chance. They're catching points at home. I'll take the 2 points. Give me Carolina +2 at home. And the Indianapolis Colts at the Oakland Raiders. The Raiders +3. This one, I got to be honest with you, I don't have much of a good rationale for you. The Raiders are in full tank mode, it feels like. They traded Amari Cooper earlier this week. Somehow they got a first-round pick for him. Think about that. And it just, I mean, I'm sure people hate this if you're not a Patriots fan or you don't live in New England. The thought of the Cowboys giving up a first-round pick for Amari Cooper, and the Patriots gave up a fifth-round pick for Josh Gordon. Belichick wins again. It's amazing. I don't really have a good explanation for why I like this game or why I like the Raiders +3. It just feels like everyone and their brother is going to be looking at it saying Indianapolis, 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 especially on the heels of putting up 100 points last week. I still don't think Indy's any good. I don't think Oakland's any good either, but catching points at home, and it's a field goal. It's a whole 3. I think that's important. I don't want to say you're playing for the push, but there's a scenario where at least I got that in my back pocket. Give me Oakland +3 at home against the Indianapolis Colts. So a quick recap. NFL Week 8, 14-7-0 year-to-date. Redskins at Giants. Give me the Redskins -1. Ravens at Panthers. Give me the Panthers +2 at home. Colts at Raiders. Raiders +3 at home. If If you've been listening to this live.drf.com, livestream.com, the Daily Racing Forms Twitter handle, at DRF Inside Post, or the Daily Racing Forms Facebook page, thank you for doing so. If you listen to podcasts like most of you do, YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com, as well as Spotify. If you're over on YouTube, click that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up. Greatly appreciated. You get all the latest from DRFTV. If you're over on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, write us a review, give us a positive rating. Greatly appreciated. Questions, comments, concerns, fire away at me on Twitter, at Bernier_Matt, or beneath the video player on the YouTube channel. And for that one individual with the whole Justify thing, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but I'm going to give it right back to you. I don't have any problem with the horse. I think he's fine. So I was wrong. I picked against him. I'm wrong all the time. What do I care? I have an opinion. You have an opinion. It's the name of the game, isn't it? So usually I'll try to stay up to date with responding to people and getting into conversations and things of that nature. But again, at Bernier_Matt on Twitter. Next week, I believe the plan is the annual joint DRF Players Podcast, Matt Bernier Show, Breeders' Cup Preview. I want to say that's going to be Wednesday night. We'll be recording that probably around 9 o'clock. Maybe we'll try to do something live along with it, whether it's a Periscope or something of that nature. And then hopefully that'll be out sometime Thursday-ish. But next week is going to be all over the place. There will not be a recap show. I'm flying to Louisville on Saturday. I'll be down there all through the week. We've got all sorts of things coming your way. DRF stakes previews of all the Breeders' Cup races. You name it. A couple editions out of the gate next week. I'll be involved with the simulcast show, so you'll be able to catch me over there. I'll be involved with the NBC show. We'll have the Betting the Breeders' Cup show over on NBCSN. All sorts of things coming your way next week. And there will be, again, the joint DRF Players Podcast, Matt Bernier Show, Breeders' Cup special, as we have become accustomed to doing so. If you're playing any of the races this weekend, best of luck however you're playing, whatever you're playing, or wherever you're playing. We will speak again next week. Breeders' Cup from Louisville, Kentucky. It's finally here. Enjoy it. Do all your homework. Get ready. The pre-entries are out. Formulator pre-entries are out. Get in there. Dive in. Form some opinions. Get your money down. Best of luck. It's Matt Bernier Show.